It's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He can't putt, and his partner can knock down 40-foot putts in his sleep. Welcome in another edition of Putting for Dough, as we have a lot to talk about down in New Orleans this week. We look back at the RBC Heritage. A lot of things went right, almost super right for us, and there's always some bad and, of course, some ugly. And you never know. Something may come back up this week at the end for our final card that Ben Rasa doesn't want to hear. But look, we look at the RBC. We'll look ahead. This is a busy week from a betting standpoint. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, please, before you do anything here on the OddsChecker channel. And we want you subscribed across the board so you know what's happening and you are informed, not just in the world of golf, but across with everything in the world of betting. All right, Rasa, here we are. Before we get into this week at the Zurich, we have to look back at RBC. Some things went pretty well. And this may be the first time in the history of our show where the same person will qualify for good and ugly for me.
Yeah, that sums it up probably pretty good for me. It was a weekend. Listen, I love our loyal viewers. I got a lot of messages on Twitter and in Discord, some big hits, because I thought we were on top of it. There was no doubt. I couldn't connect though. I had Cantlay outright. I had an HV3 outright. Both of those lost in somewhat horrific fashion. Cantlay should have won. HV3 was there with a chance. Fitzy was a terrible miscut. There's no doubt about it. So, in the DFS side, there's a lot more nuance. You can have really good teams, average teams, bad teams. When you're betting outright, you either win or you lose. Coming in second or getting cut is the same result, but it hurts a lot worse when you had guys right there. Even EVR made an appearance, as he always does once I write him off. So I was frustrated, but also encouraged because we really did have a good portfolio. We gave ourselves a lot of chances.
Look, there were guys up there throughout the entire leaderboard for most of the tournament, especially on Sunday, from a top 10, definitely a top 20 range. Others from Fleetwood that you dropped. Neiman, we talked about extensively. Kuchar. Now, I know it was kind of like the Kuchar Webb obligatory bet. One of the two at least hits in that top 10 range. And then there's Shane Lowry, where I don't know what to say about what happened on Sunday, Ben, because as somebody who struggles with this game, you saw Shane do something. You saw him do something that you never do, that like it's the first thing you're told never to do after a bad hole, which is take out your aggression on the tee box. And here's the thing, that killed him more than chipping from that brush into the water and ultimately doubling. He was only one back. He was scrambling better than anybody all tournament, and he had one bad chip that rolls in the water. And then what does he do? The next tee shot, and you could even hear it in the announcer saying, "Oh, expect a lot of steam on this one." And Lowry just punishes the ball hard right, turns a par 5 birdie opportunity to get back to tie with the lead into a par just to get out of that. That's what killed me. So, yeah, the good was that we had Lowry plus 2,000 right there hovering, and the ugly was him just sabotaging himself.
Yeah, I mean, I was rooting against Lowry because I was really worried he was going to win.
Of course you were, because you had Cantlay.
Yeah, because I had Cantlay, and I really never considered truly until the very end that Spieth could or would win the tournament. It just seemed like someone who was going to post a number that just couldn't possibly hold up. And then in typical Spieth fashion, immediately him and Cantlay hit the same exact shot on the playoff hole, and Cantlay's plugged. Spieth, you might as well just place it in the hole, no problem. And that was
a beautiful shot. I mean, that was the thing.
Give me a break. Like Cantlay gets just plugged.
You're coming down on Lowry and you want sympathy for Cantlay in the playoff hole? No,
yeah,
sir.
I want sympathy. Cantlay, I mean, he made one clutch putt late, but he did absolutely nothing with the flat stick on the weekend. He had that tournament in his hand, let it slip through. But again, the reality of the situation, when you bet outrights, you want a chance on Sunday. Yep. We had chances on Sunday. Guys there, that's all you can really ask for. Some of the other mid-range guys, they played well. Fleetwood played well. Hatton was fine. McDenny made the cut. Didn't really do much on the weekend, but that's more of a DFS topic. So all in all, I was happy with it. I just really felt like I could have had one of my best weeks of the year.
Yeah, you and me both, brother. We had a couple that were in
Close.
there, and it was. But I think this show is hovering or we're hitting, right? I don't think that we've had, at least consecutively, bad weeks where we look back and say, oh my goodness, maybe it's one of us, but collectively,
Yeah,
no,
well, team effort.
Right, exactly.
Good.
Speaking of which, what a transition. Team effort into the Zurich, huh?
I see what you did there. It is a team tournament.
What you
the
threw me a
softball
tournament. And let's do this here. All right. There are two things we have to talk about with the Zurich before we talk about betting, right? Before we actually look at, because this is going to impact how we bet. It's a team event, right? It's the one that you're going to see, the lone one you're going to see here on the tour this year in this capacity. And the format is the one thing that we kind of have to lay out, Ben. And then there's incentive, because as rinky-dink and kind of an annoyance as this may appear on the schedule, there's enough incentive where we have some pretty big top-ranked golfers out there playing, even if it's for their partner in this case. So let's look at the format first, some incentive, and that's really going to dial into how we look and approach this event specifically from a betting standpoint.
Yeah, so you mentioned that it's different. We don't get to see this too often, if ever. I'll be honest, I don't know how we really go about figuring out, will they blend? But what we do know is that when you've got a couple rounds where you're playing 4 balls and then some that you're playing alternate shot, being able to get in a rhythm, being able to work off your teammate and play as a team is really important. You need that chemistry. You see most of the pairings when we dive into them. A lot of guys from the same country, guys that probably have played a lot of golf together, I would guess. And I think that's what we're really looking for. So it is different. The 36-hole cut, top 33 teams. We're looking at just a different week altogether, but I do like it. And we've seen in the past guys that just have a knack for this, kind of like when you get into Ryder Cup play, guys that have a knack for playing as a team rather than individual. That's something we have to take notice of this week.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I think when we look at 2 of the 4 days being 4 balls, best ball, where you're out there playing your own ball the whole time, and it's either you or your partner's best score each hole gets counted. At that point, I mean, this is a nuance, I think, that doesn't get brought up in match play because you don't have a partner normally. But you want to, I think, at least want to look at one of the guys in the grouping that you're looking at that is going to take risks, that can attack a hole, that can not lag up, but really attack a 30, 35-foot birdie putt. Somebody who is successful maybe at birdies or better, right? Birdies gain, something along those lines if you wanted to attack a metric here, although I think this is probably less of a metric week than any. It's just you want to look at guys in a grouping that are going to take a risk. Somebody in that group has to take a risk. If you have a solid golfer who's right there at the top in world rankings, Ben, I want to make sure that the pairing is somebody who can be aggressive. And you know what? If they don't pay off in the first day, then you at least have the parachute, which is somebody who's been playing really well.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the more interesting debates about what ideally you would want. So there's two schools of thought. If you play very similar games, you're probably setting your partner up for shots that they normally hit from areas that they normally land. If you're wildly different, though, you can kind of do some different things where if I say I'm very conservative off the tee, I put it in the fairway and you're a crazy bomber. Well, you can take an extreme shot then and be different. We're not just copying each other. So I think for aggression, that's kind of where I would want different skill sets. I think for safety, similar skill sets, but when we're talking outrights, I'm going to look to players and teams that have kind of that blend of upside.
All right, so let's look at that. I do want to mention though that there is some incentive here. I mean, you're going to get a 2-year PGA exemption for 2 years if you win this. You're guaranteed spots in the PGA, the Players, the Tournament of Champions, and other invitational events that are coming away. And then there's a ton of FedEx points that you get on top of this. So this is not just a $500,000 check for showing up, a pat on the back and saying, hey, enjoy the French Quarter. There's some legit golf incentive, which is why you see some big names. So just getting that out there at the very least, Ben, that there's some pretty big carrots dangling for these guys out there this week.
Yeah, that's a different show. Like I think the tour should do more of this stuff. I do find it kind of shady that you can lean on John Rahm if you can recruit him. Yes. And I could be on tour potentially, but there is a lot to play for. We've seen it. And again, I think from betting, there's some edges that we just don't normally know. And we have to think of, and that's good. Anytime you have a good opportunity with a different format, if you do the work, you can find some efficiency. And this board is pretty interesting, particularly up top.
Let's look at it. You start your number one favorite that jumped out here, and why, I guess, is a big reason for this type of tournament, because we're probably using more recency and eye test than anything else here.
No doubt. You have short odds here. It's not like, I guess in some tournaments, if you have a really good player, you're going to see 6, 7 to 1. But here we've got multiple teams inside 10 to 1. And the team that I was drawn to, and talk about different form, is Cantlay and Xander. 8 to 1 to win this. Cantlay's playing fantastic, bounces back after the Masters. We haven't seen Xander, and he was as disappointing as, I think, probably the number one disappointing player at the Masters. He had 1 birdie in 36 holes. Can he flip it? Both guys, phenomenal Ryder Cup experience. They know what they're doing. Amongst the strongest teams out there, you've got Hovland and Morikawa as the betting favorite. I'm not going to push back on that, but to me, pending Xander is okay, and I do think that he is. He's looking to get off the drought. I could see Cantlay and Xander being the team to beat this week. At 8 to 1, I'm okay putting them on the card.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Is where you see the number and if it makes sense for you here, because it's not a typical 9 to 1 bet. You've got a shorter field. You've got the volatility of a teammate. So and I don't know, I'm kind of asking you in this, how much does that factor in to where if this were a regular tournament and you saw Cantlay at 800 to win, and this is not a match play, this is just go straight out stroke play, maybe that number is too low for you, as opposed to now with the volatility, it can maybe help mitigate that damage of a number.
So it's that's a very complicated type of situation, in the sense that if you don't have it on the PGA Tour, you're out of luck. You can't go to the bullpen. But here, if you don't have it, you can lean on an actual teammate, and the strength. Take every team and look at the weakest player. Yep. I mean, this is the strongest team, maybe, amongst the favorites. There are some teams that have 1 elite player and I think 1 average player, but the strength here is that say Cantlay doesn't have it. Well, if we get good Xander, Xander could be amongst the best players in this field, any field, when he's on. So I think that's what you're looking up top. Leishman and Cam Smith have shown that they probably have the strongest chemistry. They're great friends. They've played together all the time, including here, had success. They're 10 to 1. I get it. But to me, for around the same price, give me Cantlay and Xander as my favorite to win this event.
So I'm going to take advantage, I think, of Scheffler alone probably being a little higher there, with the inclusion of Ryan Palmer at 900. And I think the reason is because Palmer is that guy that you mentioned. Like, Palmer can drag you down, or Palmer can be an X factor and really put you over. It's hard to ignore, Ben, how well just overall Scottie Scheffler is playing right now. I mean, he is on an absolute tear. I don't think this is recency bias. I think this is season so far bias. If you look at how well Scheffler is playing in bigger moments, he has the ability 2 of the 4 days, and that's all I really need for Ryan Palmer is 2 of 4 days here. But Scheffler, with the 4 balls on 2 of these 4, has the ability to single-handedly carry this team. So I'm really looking at alternate shots right now, and I do think that there is a little bit of some sort of breakaway from style here, where if Palmer is on, this works. So I'm basically limiting myself to 2 days of this tournament with right now the best golfer in the world at plus 900 overall, hoping, but really betting, that Ryan Palmer is going to be able to give me that at least one of those 2 days. And now we're looking at somewhere in the mix on that final day.
So Ryan Palmer,
who's won here, by the way.
Well, yeah, because Ryan Palmer he must be like hilarious or a great time, because he only plays with the best. If you're the best player in the world and you come to Zurich, you have to play with Ryan Palmer. He plays with Rahm, plays with Scheffler.
Maybe it's the namesake.
Yeah, just good times for him. Yeah, exactly. So that's the type of team that I'm alluding to. No disrespect to Ryan Palmer. He's a good player, but he's not as good as Cantlay and Xander and Scheffler and Hovland and Morikawa. He is the glaring weak link amongst the favorites. So that's the boom bust team. I'm going more for stability up top because I do think that there is a chance that Scheffler has to perform in my mind. Whereas if Cantlay or Xander don't have it, the other one can mask it maybe a little more than Ryan Palmer typically could.
Let's look at some mid-range long shots. We don't have that 40, 20, 10 this week, clearly, because of the short field. Basically, the cut is at top 33. So there's no element there that we can apply. That's why we're going to give you some more mid-range and long shots. But look, we have to tell you, as we continue to tell you each and every show, and it's not just this show, any and every show, about our premium betting Discord. It's awesome. Let me brag here for Ben Rasa, who is on fire. Steve Buzzard on fire, Alex Baker, all three sharps giving you picks each and every day from our premium betting picks Discord. And you can see down the line here, the downloadable ROI tracker. And just before the show, we were going through a couple of our boss man's props for tonight in the NBA. So you get them out early, you get in some value. Rasa is giving you stuff, exotics from all over the place, futures on the Bundesliga. Like, you never know what you're going to get from Rasa.
You want to stay away from my soccer picks. That's step one in Discord. But no, I mean, it's a great group. My favorite thing is I've talked a lot about this. It's not just, we've got some good sharp players giving out picks. Got a great community. A lot of people jumping in saying, what do you think about this live, talking through the games, sweating the games together. And we've got it for every sport. So if you want to hop in even for the week, we'd love to have you. It's just been a great time, and hopefully we cash some tickets.
All right, let's look at some mid-range. And you're going to start with your mid-range plays, but let me just set the scene here as far as how I'm kind of looking at this. And I wonder if this is anything you are applying at the very least, and how you're betting the mid-range and even some longer shots. But again, I want guys who are really good when in being aggressive. Like, that's what I'm looking at. We talked a little bit about that. So I wonder how much that's factoring in from a team standpoint when you start to look at some mid-range guys.
So when we get to the mid-range, you're obviously not going to find everything that you want, just like you wouldn't on a typical PGA Tour week. Here's where I start to look towards like blending and upside. And I came up with a couple teams sitting in that kind of 25 to 40 to 1 range that I think are very interesting. Countrymen, we'll start with the Chileans. We got Neiman and Mito, super upside, aggressive, irons. If they can start making some putts, I mean, what is there to say? I think Joaquin Neiman has shown he's on a trajectory. He's not Scottie Scheffler, but he is taking strides. He's going to be competing in the strongest fields. We saw that at Genesis, and Mito can play. There's no doubt. 25 to 1 there. And then I'll just throw this one out real quickly, and I'll see where you landed. The South Koreans, Sun Jae-im and Ben Yan. Ben Yan doesn't even have status. Looked really good in the Korn Ferry event last week. The thing I like about them, Ben Hunan is an elite scrambler, an elite ball striker. He can't putt. And that does bring down a scrambling, I should say, around the green more than scrambling. But Sun Jae-im is very well-rounded. So as a team, I think they're going to work really well because Ben Yan can set him up, can work out of trouble, and Sun Jae-im can make putts, no doubt about it. So I look at them at 40 to 1, motivated to win, good chemistry. They've got experience together. I like that spot. And I think that's one of my favorite bets on the entire card.
My favorite bet is the one I placed before you even sent us this rundown sheet. And then I see that you had it on there as your 25 to 1 mid-range. And that's Neiman Pereira. I mean, these two guys we talk about each and every week. They hover. They're playing well. They're not victims of their own mistakes. They may just be victim of the field and somebody else just playing or being a little more aggressive on a final day. But last week, I think, shows that these two guys hovering now together, it can be dangerous. 25 to 1 seems a little light, so I love that number there as well. I'm going to go with HV3, who has been pounding the ball right now, and he's been playing so consistently that I think if you add a guy like Watson, who now in these smaller categories like birdies are better, strokes gain total, right, like across the round, where Watson can be aggressive, you have a mainstay, I think, in HV3. Harold Varner III is punishing the ball. I mean, you could see this here. He is really dialed in right now. And there is volatility with Bubba Watson, hence why they are a 25 to 1 play as well. But I think specifically, like you and On, targeting two things that he can do really well. I can target Watson and say, again, you can get me through the alternate shot at 25-1. That's a good matchup with HV3. And then the one that I'm looking at, again, it is a similar scenario with Watson and Sig, where Sig Straka, and I know you hate going to Sepp Straka here, but it's hard to ignore how well he's hitting the ball as well across the board here. But Straka and Sig is a good teammate in that he can be aggressive and that he can be aggressive with your second shot. He can be aggressive scrambling, or he can be aggressive with the long putt. So I like that kind of mid-range, teetering on the long range, 50-1 Sig Straka.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I absolutely get it. The number's pretty good. Like HV3 and Bubba, I think is a very strong pairing. I just don't love the number. And when I try to make my card, I try not to say, okay, I'm just going to play. Like for me, I'm only going to play probably one team around 25-1, and it's Neiman and Pereira. It's not that I hate HV3 and Bubba. I just know realistically to get them both on my betting card, it's going to be a little tough. So I look at that. Sig and Straka's playing fantastic. He's going to probably have to do the heavy lifting, really improve the around the green game. So I get it. The thing I like about them, it's kind of a dead range for me. I'm just going to rattle off a couple teams. McDowell and Seamus, Merritt and Streb, Laird and McIntyre, Kirk and Todd. I don't really see it there. So if I need someone around 50-1, I'm okay. I prefer On and Im, obviously. That's because, I recommended them. But other than that, I think it's a pretty open range. So I see how you got there in that kind of, upper teetering on the long shots.
These guys, and it's going to factor into one of the names that you're going to mention as we move to some long shots here. But these guys, looking at top 10 who are in the second golfer, if you will, in their pairing, right? Top 10 in the combination of strokes gained total and birdie or better gained, which are aggressive metrics. And again, this is probably the last week of the tour that you want to apply metrics for dead-on bets. I get that. But there is something about these guys, including one that you're going to mention here as a secondary member of a group who's in the top 10 of the combination of that category.
So when you get to these kind of longer shots and things like that, I definitely think that you're just looking for a path, like most long shots, like something to happen where it could set it up. So Hadvin and Svensson, not Stenson, Svensson, the other Canadian, 65-1. Both played well last week. They were in it without being really in it, but they got their reps certainly at Heritage. I like the number. I think they're a little more conservative, but they're the type of team I do expect them to be amongst the 33. And if you do that, it's kind of like, all right, I've kind of done my job. Give me a shot. Give me a lotto ticket, and we'll see what happens. I do have one team, though, way down, triple digits.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about. Go ahead.
Bo Hostler and Thigala have both various times in 2022 been on the cusp of winning, have been in the thick of it to grab that breakthrough win on tour. Why not do it together? I think they are super live to be awful. And we saw this with Bo Hostler last week. When he doesn't have it, you're looking at, he's going to miss the cut by 10 strokes. When Thigala doesn't have it, there's going to be some bad rounds. But when they do, talk about a boom bust. And we're talking about 130-1 to win this. That is worth a splash. I think that's a perfect long shot. They've got the firepower. They've both individually been in the thick of PGA Tour events. Why not pair them up and take a chance?
They are right there in the middle, top 10, this team in birdies or better gained. And Thigala is one of the guys that I mentioned that's top 10 in that combined category. Yep. And now essentially what you're doing is putting that pressure on Bo at this point, right? And just being like, all right, you show up and then you expect Thigala at 130-1. It's the same thing that I applied for my 130-1 there with Lipsky and Ray there with the similar scenario here of taking guys in this way back end. And that team is 10th overall in birdies or better gained. And again, you have Lipsky in here, like the ones we mentioned that are in that combination category. So that's what I was looking at, is just trying to identify somebody in this long shot group who could be so aggressive on a best ball that it doesn't even matter if they shoot a 78 because their partner shooting par is okay. But if you take that risk, there's a really good shot that you might shoot 65 or 66 because you don't have that pressure in that single stroke play. So I love where we are. I love our long shots, I think, the most here outside of Neiman and Pereira.
No, it's good for a team like this. I think it's pretty easy to say that I'm more worried about when they're playing alternate shot. I feel very good that they're going to score. And when they both have a chance at a hole, somebody's going to be okay. What I worry about is if one of them is not on their A game and it's alternate shot, it could be a disaster. And that's what you're going to get when you're talking about these type of spots. So it's worth a splash. It's worth to be on the card, but it is 130-1. And that's probably why.
All right, real quick, before we end on our final card, a couple of minutes here, and another reminder, if you haven't already, please hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed here to the Odd Shopper channel. It's not just putting for dough, but you have PGA picks each and every week as well, and then tons of sports betting content from Lofty's NBA picks or MLB picks each and every day, so you're getting everything covered for you across the board. Let's look, is there anybody else? Because when I see Adam Hadwin on the run sheet, you know, normally that's me bringing him up and being chastised for it. So what gives here, Rasa?
So yeah, again, you know, the Canadian pairing there, they're 65-1. I honestly think that they might be slightly better as like a top 20. You're getting almost 2-1 plus 170 because to me, they're going to blend really well. I just don't know unless they go crazy putting, particularly with Hadwin. It doesn't seem like the greatest spot. I prefer maybe the South Korean pairing or even going to some of those real long shots. So Hadwin and Svensson, I think, are worth an honorable mention as we talk about the final card and whatnot. I think they're more going to be a top 20 for me. And my anchor is going to be that Cantlay, Xander pairing and the Chileans. I think that Mito and Neiman are just really primed. They're just good players. It's not even like, oh, this is a good format. You've got two good players paired up. Why wouldn't they play well?
All right, so Cantlay, Schauffele is the first one. The Chileans, Team Chile, is the second one. And anything else in your final card?
Again, I think there are a couple teams north of 100, particularly Hostler and Thigala, that are okay to splash. Matchups I'm going to look at. They'll be in Discord. I think there are some opportunities to go in the head-to-heads. Just don't really like anything right now. So I'm going to keep it pretty light. Kind of a favorite, almost how we did the show, Eytan, honestly. Yeah. I've got a favorite, I've got a mid-range, and I've got a long shot that I'm pretty comfortable at each level.
Me too, and I'll just wrap with that here. Scheffler, Palmer, again, I'm riding the best golfer right now in the world with a player that, in Ryan Palmer, needs to show up 2 days. 2 days. And again, we're talking about him being paired with Scottie Scheffler, not Johnny Scheffler or somebody that you've never heard of. So let me start there with Scheffler and Palmer as my favorite. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to meet you halfway, and I'm going to bang HV3 and Watson as a top 10 play here, not as an overall play. I think that gives me a little more flexibility to put both that and the Team Chile on as a winner on my card there. And then lastly, and look, you have this uncanny ability, Ben, to be a week ahead of what's going on in the PGA. So I'm not going to fight back on that. You may not like to hear the name Russell Knox, but Stewart and Knox at plus 9,000 in this event is good value, and you know it's good value. So that would be a 1/10 of a unit on that.
No, I don't know it's good value.
Wait a second. Knox?
No.
Okay.
No. But other than that,
fight.
I have been, it's been very tilting. EVR is the king of this. I have played him, and he does not play well in the next week. So maybe maybe find something, because Knox was awful last week.
Telling you.
He did lose a lot of strokes putting, and Stewart is an elite putter. So the pairing is very interesting. I'll give you that. I've learned a long time that you shouldn't back Russell Knox in the outright market. I will stick to that principle until I'm broke.
There you go. At JazzRaz DFS.
Don't do
at
it.
Shander Show. You follow us on Twitter. Thanks to Chris for producing another edition of Putting for Dough. We're here each week, so please hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Share, subscribe, the whole thing. And make sure you're subscribed to our premium betting Discord. That link's below this video. And we keep telling you can win some money, right, Ben?
Absolutely. We want you involved in all things OddsChecker and Awesemo. It's a great time. If you got questions, Twitter handles are there. It's going to be a fun week. I'm excited to dive into this. And again, it's just a little low, and then we'll have another major on deck soon enough.
Cannot wait. Cannot wait. Enjoy and best of luck. Hit them straight and cash some tickets.